I'd like to take a look at facial aging and de-aging. We'll begin by taking a look at the naturally occurring changes that happen with age, and then use that as a framework for looking at how people in the digital arts or other fields who are trying to depict actors either younger or older might work with what we know about natural facial aging in order to make those choices. And in particular, looking at de-aging, because that seems to be more common in cinema and other media these days. We'll begin by taking a look at a face now as an older face and when they were younger, and we'll begin with yours truly, looking at a picture of me 20 years ago and what I look like now. So let's begin by looking at this side-to-side panel of pictures of me. On the left, you'll see a picture of me when I was 41 years old, and on the right, you'll see a picture of me 20 years later, age 61, which was just taken a couple months ago, actually. And on quick glance, you can see that my face looks thinner, there are more lines on my face, there are more wrinkles in my neck, and my hairline is a little further back. But let's unpack all these changes and try to get an understanding of what happened here. First of all, in terms of facial volume, I should say that my weight has been pretty constant over this period of time, so it's not that I lost weight. That's not why my face looks thinner. There is a loss of facial volume with aging. One thing responsible for this is the loss of subcutaneous fat. In particular, in the cheeks, there's a loss of buccal fat, but the whole face experiences a loss of subcutaneous fat around the mouth, as well as the cheeks and the forehead, etc. There's also a loss of bone. There's a change in bone mass with age. So that's going to have an effect on things like, the zygomatic arch, the cheekbones, and other parts of the face that can contribute to less facial volume. There are changes around the eyes that primarily have to do with changes in the skin. So let's say something about what happens to the skin. This loss of subcutaneous fat does affect the appearance of the skin. The skin thins with age, it loses elasticity, and there's some degree of separation from the tissues beneath it. All of these things, plus the loss of subcutaneous fat, contribute to the drooping of the skin. So if you look and you see the marionette lines that are forming around the corners of my mouth, that is from the cheeks basically hanging a little bit more so that there are folds, and the folds create a shadow. That's the marionette lines. My nasolabial furrow is a little bit deeper from the same effect. I don't have a strong nasolabial furrow, but if you look, that it's more pronounced than it was 20 years ago. Let's look around the eyes, because it's a place where you see a lot of changes in people with time. Some people get very puffy around the eyes. I didn't get puffy, but the eye areas become a bit more cavernous with a loss of fat and the looseness of the skin. So you see a little bit deeper infraorbital furrow. The area above the eyes changes a lot. Now, for people like me who have a clear upper eyelid, one of the things that happens is you lose visibility of that. You'll see when I'm younger, you can see my upper eyelid quite clearly, but now that the skin above the eyelid has basically drooped down, and you can't really see the upper eyelid much. And what's interesting when you compare these side to side, I think my eyelids are actually lifted a little bit more in the more recent shot. So the amount of iris that you see comparing these two pictures is actually a little bit more right now. But if my eyes had been open the same amount in terms of the upper eyelid lift or FACS Action Unit 5, then my eyes right now would have looked a lot more closed. One of the things that we see was with that skin getting looser above the eye, thinner and looser above the eye, it can obscure the upper eyelid and make the eyes look smaller or reduce the eye aperture. In terms of my brow, you see these 11s. Those are the glabellar furrows. Now, I had those in the younger shot. They're actually remarkably faint here. Depending on lighting, you might see, I've seen pictures of myself younger where they're more pronounced, but they're definitely more pronounced with age. Part of that are the changes in the skin that contribute to wrinkling, the lack of elasticity, the thinning of the skin, the loss of fat. But also with time, 20 years more of my using my corrugator muscles, which are the muscles that are oblique right here, and when they contract, they primarily bring the brows together, deepening those furrows. Just like repeated use will increase, the cut between pectoral muscles on the chest, increased use will create more bulging in the resting face from corrugator and deepen those furrows between the eyebrows. The skin on the neck is looser. I mentioned my hairline, and this is worth talking about. We think about this in men, but women do experience hair loss in menopause. I'm fortunate that I had a lot of hair going into menopause, so I still have a lot of hair, but you can see that my hairline has receded quite a bit and it seems to be a bit thinner. This is an example that I think is a really good job of de-aging. What we see here side by side are two images of Stellan Skarsgård. This is the character Luthen he portrayed in the show Andor, season 2. On the right, we see a current image of Skarsgård. This is what the character Luthen looked like in, the current picture of him. On the left, we see the de-aged version of Stellan Skarsgård. Now, why I like this one so much is the cases of de-aging that I think have not done a good job are when they just try to smooth out the wrinkles and maybe make the face look a little fuller, but not much else. What I like about this is they preserved furrows that were important. I think in this de-age picture, he's probably supposed to be around 40, judging from what we know about the character and what was going on at the time. I like that we still have the glabellar furrows. This is a feature of his face, and they're not as deep as they are in the more current shot, but they're still visible. The forehead is a lot smoother. In the current picture, I think he may have been not just contracting corrugators, so that contributed to the depth of the glabellar furrows, but also lifting up frontalis a little bit, so we see those lines in the forehead. But the forehead generally looks smoother. Obviously, the hairline is a little further up, although he was, even as that character, wearing a hairpiece in the current piece. Also, I like how the cheeks are fuller, but he still has his nasolabial furrow. In the current shot of the Luthen character, his cheeks are quite drawn. There's a lot of sagging of the skin. We see some marionette lines, and all of that is a bit more subtle in the de-aged shot. The lips are a little bit redder. That's another thing that happens with age that I didn't mention when I was looking at the picture of myself because I had lipstick on in both pictures. But you tend to lose a lot of the tinting, the natural tinting to the lips as people get older. There's a little bit less puffing under his eyes in the de-age shot, but we still see some prominence there from the infraorbital furrow. So overall, I think this is a great job. The whole face looks lifted a little bit, which is important. When you're trying to depict de-aging, that loss of volume that happens with age, not just the subcutaneous fat, but also the bone loss will affect how prominent the cheeks are. And I really like how his cheekbones look a little bit more lifted and his cheeks look more full in the earlier shot. The only thing that I think is probably that you could improve upon here is the eyes, because we see that even though they've cleaned up the puffiness and the wrinkling around the eyes, that upper eyelid is still pretty far down over his eye. Now, that might just be the shape of his eyes, but I'm thinking for, give him the actor and his background and what Luthen looks like at the current time, that we might have seen more of Luthen's upper eyelid in this de-age shot. But overall, this is an amazing job. So I hope this has been helpful to you, really just keeping in mind what happens to the face naturally with aging and how that might play a role in informing our choices about de-aging.